reporting PPP or EIDL funds in your accounting. Because now that we're getting towards the end of the year, we have to determine how that should be reflected on our books so that when we file our own taxes or we hand our information over to our tax accountant, they are able to use that information to file our taxes accurately. So, as most of you know, the PPP funds are forgivable or potentially forgivable, depending on what your situation was. And so this calls into question a number of things. One is, how is it supposed to be reflected on your taxes? And how is it supposed to be reflected in your records? So I wanted to just kind of show you real quick. I'm going to use QuickBooks Online to just kind of demonstrate what that would look like. Okay, so what that would look like in QuickBooks when you get it. So when you get it deposited, so originally when you got your funds, you would have did a deposit. So let's just create a pretend transaction here. We're going to do it on May 1st because that was around the time that many people got it. And so down here then is where we would record the actual transaction and which account it would go to. So for the time being, we are going to put PPP funds into a liability account. The reason why is because until it is forgiven, it is actually a loan. And it would be payable within 2 years. So if we got $75,000, this is how we would record that in May. So then when we go over to our P&L, this is a sample company, just so you know. I'm not sure what's all in here, but if we would run, the P&L for this year so far, we are not going to see that in income. It's not considered an income. There's nothing in income reflecting that, nothing in expenses reflecting this. And so this is kind of where the question comes in. Well, okay, you spent that, you used that money for expenses. How should that reflect? And there's been a lot of question regarding this because it hasn't been made very clear yet as to how this is going to be treated. One thing that we do know for sure is that anything that you used the funds for, so if you used it for payroll costs or rent or utilities, which were the things that you were supposed to use those funds for, if you used it for those funds, then you can no longer deduct those funds. And for me, it's kind of a roundabout way of saying that the PPP funds are going to be taxable if they are forgiven. If not, then it's going to be treated as a loan and it'll just stay on the balance sheet. So right now we're looking at the P&L, but if we go over here to the balance sheet and look at that, we are going to see this liability account for PPP funds sitting right here under other liabilities or under the current liabilities that are reflecting. So it's a loan. So let's say we get to the next year and that this is forgiven. So at that time, what you would do is create a journal entry. And we would do it for whenever that period of time is, 2021. We're going to essentially take PPP funds out of the liability account. And then we're going to put it into income. If we have other income, because then at that point, it technically will be taxable once it's forgiven. That amount is going to be taxable, or you're going to have to not deduct the expenses that the funds were used to forgive or to be used for, the funds were spent out on. Essentially, it's the same thing. It's basically a wash, whether you don't count the expenses or you count it as income. In any respect, those things are going to be a wash to each other, the expenses and the income. If it is not forgiven, then it's going to be a loan, and those things are just going to be the regular expenses that you would spend it on. If you got the EIDL advance, so if you applied for the EIDL advance, there was a $10,000 advance that you were able to get depending on the number of employees you had. that money is supposed to go against the PPP. So whatever amount you had gotten for that, so let's say you had 5 employees, you got $5,000 as the EIDL advance, your maximum forgivable amount for PPP is going to be lowered by that $5,000. So instead of you being able to get forgiven for $75,000, the maximum amount you'd be able to get forgiven for is $70,000. So that's something to keep in mind as well. There's still not a whole lot of information as to how this is all going to exactly play out, especially in regards to our taxes. But this is how you would record it on QuickBooks. You would record it as right now liability. And the same thing with the EIDL. I would put that in there as well. For the EIDL advance, I'm thinking it's probably going to be more of other income. So we've been recording that way on our books or on our clients' books. So if it was from the SBA events, we would put it into other income. So the SBA advance, okay, $7,000 for that. We're going to record it as other income. So then when we go over to our P&L, we're going to see that on the books this year as other income. And right now it's just going to make me a liar, apparently. Oh, no, here. Other income is right here. So usually it's down below, but it is reflecting here. So then this is actually going to go towards your income. But the PPP and the EIDL loan amounts should get put in as liabilities on your books for your record keeping purposes, because until they figure out what those are actually going to look like, they are both loans. The EIDL is going to be a loan regardless, but the PPP may or may not be forgiven for you. And so right now we're going to just put it on the books as a liability account. Once that actually changes over into something you have to report, which it probably isn't going to happen until 2021. At that point, you will have to claim it as income and then determine what the expenses are going to be. I'm sure there'll be more guidance that it's going to come out on that, especially as we kind of get closer to that and after we get over this election piece of things, then things will kind of start to come a little bit more to head. I'm going to do a separate video, but there have been some updates as far as some stuff that's getting through Congress or trying to get through Congress. It's not expected to go through before the election. So just kind of wanted to update you and give you an idea of how you should record that in your books. This is the case for QuickBooks Online, spreadsheet, Zero, Wave, whatever kind of accounting software you are using. Make sure that you're recording it accurately because you do want to have that reflected somewhere on your books. If you have any questions, please let me know. Drop any comments in the links, and hopefully this was helpful. Have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you.